In the autumn of 1862, Robert E. Lee was invincible. He had just humiliated the Union Army at the Second Battle of Manassas. Now, he was leading his ragged but high-spirited army of Northern Virginia onto Northern soil for the first time. Washington was in a panic, but Lee's first invasion of the North would end in a catastrophic, bloody battle. The cause of this disaster wasn't brilliant tactics or a heroic charge, but a small, almost absurd accident. 3 cigars, forgotten in a field. Today, we will unravel the most incredible butterfly effect of the American Civil War. We will witness how a single piece of lost intelligence fell into the hands of the wrong general, ultimately triggering the bloodiest day in American history and forever changing the meaning of the war. Robert E. Lee was a gambler. His Maryland campaign was an all-in bet. His army was exhausted and poorly supplied, but he believed a decisive victory on Northern soil would force the Lincoln administration to recognize Southern independence and win desperately needed recognition from Britain and France. To achieve this, he devised an extremely bold and extremely dangerous plan. Special Order 191. It was an almost arrogant plan. Lee decided to divide his already outnumbered army into 5 parts, spreading them like an open hand. They were sent in different directions simultaneously to capture the arsenal at Harper's Ferry and cut supply lines. The entire plan hinged on one assumption: that the Union commander, George B. McClellan, would, as always, be slow to act. The order was copied and distributed to the various commanders. The Confederates' bold plan was in motion, and everything seemed to be under control. But no one knew that one of these fateful copies was, at that very moment, wrapped around 3 cigars, lying abandoned in a recently vacated camp. On September 13, 1862, fate made its entrance. 2 Union soldiers from the 27th Indiana Infantry, Corporal Barton Mitchell and Sergeant John Bloss, were resting in a field just abandoned by the Confederates. In the grass, Mitchell spotted a small package. He opened it. Inside were 3 cigars. The paper wrapped around them was covered in ink. He began to read. This was no letter home. It was a detailed set of military orders signed by R.H. Chilton, Lee's adjutant. The soldiers immediately knew this was no joke. The document was rushed up the chain of command. When it finally reached the command tent of the Union General-in-Chief, George B. McClellan, an officer, burst in, exclaiming, "General, here is Lee's entire plan. We have him." Historians now widely believe the order was lost through a moment of absurd negligence. A Confederate staff officer, likely under General D.H. Hill, received the copy but assumed it was merely a duplicate. He carelessly used the intelligence to wrap his precious cigars and eventually lost it. For any general, this was a gift from heaven. A complete map of the enemy's deployment, a plan detailed beyond belief. Lee's army was dangerously scattered and vulnerable. It was a loaded pistol, pointed directly at Lee's heart. And fate had just handed that pistol to perhaps the only man in the Union Army who was afraid to pull the trigger. George B. McClellan, the young Napoleon, was a brilliant organizer and a leader beloved by his soldiers. But he had one fatal flaw. He was pathologically cautious and wildly overestimated Lee's numbers. When McClellan received the intelligence, his first reaction wasn't to attack, but to suspect. This is too good to be true. It must be a trap. But fate, in delivering this gift, also provided the proof. One of McClellan's own staff officers, Samuel Pittman, stepped forward. Before the war, Pittman had served with Robert H. Chilton, Lee's adjutant general, the man who had signed the order. He took one look at the signature and assured McClellan, "It's genuine. I recognize Chilton's handwriting." Doubt vanished, replaced by euphoria. McClellan famously exclaimed, "If I cannot whip Bobby Lee with this paper, I will be willing to go home." He finally knew what to do. But knowing what to do and doing it immediately are two different things. Confederate spies quickly reported the loss of the order to Lee. Stunned, Lee immediately ordered his scattered forces to converge at all costs on a small town, Sharpsburg. Lee was in a desperate race, and McClellan, after confirming the intelligence, did not order an immediate pursuit. Instead, he spent 18 precious hours preparing for what he considered a perfect, coordinated, but slow movement. He did not set his massive army in motion until the following morning. McClellan's delay cost him the golden opportunity to annihilate Lee's army. But those 18 hours also forced Lee into a desperate corner. Lee's forces formed a hasty defensive line near Antietam Creek. Their backs were to the river. There was no retreat. McClellan's Union Army, finally assembled with a force several times larger, attacked. September 17, 1862, the bloodiest single day in American history began. The battle erupted in a cornfield at dawn. Soldiers fired at each other through the waist-high stalks, suffering horrific casualties. The focus of the fight then shifted to a sunken farm road, which would earn a new name in history, Bloody Lane. Here, Confederates held a natural trench. For 3 hours, the two sides engaged in a hellish, close-range slaughter. At the southern end of the battlefield, Union General Burnside's troops launched repeated, suicidal charges against Confederate sharpshooters to take a small stone bridge, Burnside's Bridge. After 12 hours of brutal combat, over 23,000 Americans were killed, wounded, or missing. It remains the deadliest day in any of America's wars. Tactically, it was a draw. McClellan, cautious to the end, failed to deliver a final, crushing blow, allowing Lee's battered army to slip back into Virginia the next night. But strategically, those 3 cigars changed everything. Lee's invasion was stopped. This costly victory gave President Abraham Lincoln the political opportunity he desperately needed. 5 days later, Lincoln seized that chance and issued the Emancipation Proclamation. A lost order forced a battle neither side had planned, and that Battle of Antietam ultimately transformed the Civil War to preserve the Union into a moral crusade to destroy slavery. It forces us to ask, if that Confederate officer had never lost those 3 cigars, if Lee's plan had succeeded, what would the end of the Civil War and the future of America have looked like